Japan is moving to the right just in time for a visit by President Trump. Welcome to the call. I'm Jay Sapsford. Japan's new prime minister is 64-year-old Sanae Takaichi. A fan of Margaret Thatcher and of heavy metal rock bands, she campaigned as a staunch conservative. Her ascent to Japan's top post comes days before U.S. President Trump is expected to visit Tokyo. Topping the agenda are deeply complicated issues with implications for business, including tariffs and supply chains, defense spending and regional geopolitics, a weak yen, and Japan's pledge to invest as much as $550 billion in the U.S. All of which raises a question: is Japan ready for Donald Trump's Asia tour? Joining us now is David Boling, a former USTR trade negotiator and currently director of Japan and Asian trade at Eurasia Group. David, welcome to the call.
Good evening from Tokyo, Jay. A city you know well. Great to be on.
It is great to have you, and it is great to have you live from Tokyo. And I wonder if we might start with just the basics. Who is Sanae Takaichi, and what was her path to the prime minister's office?
She's conservative, and I think she's a protege of former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo. So I think she very much sees herself, when it comes to policy, as in sync with Abe's view of the world. I mean, her background is interesting to me. Well, obviously, she's a woman, and so it's historic that she's the first woman prime minister in Japan, but also she's not from a uh, political family, which is the norm here in Japan. I mean, Abe is from a political family. Ishiba is from a political family. Kishido is from a political family. So you have to admire the fact that she really did this, her own way. She's been elected to the Diet 10 times. She knows how to win elections. As you mentioned, Margaret Thatcher is her idol as well. But she likes heavy metal, as you also mentioned. And I noticed one of the British tabloids said that, well, she might like Thatcher as the Iron Lady, but she really likes Iron Maiden, which I thought was kind of funny. I would say that, she's a former economic security minister, so she knows about the importance of economic security issues. I think she will lean into that. She's held other positions. She's known as being pretty wonkish when it comes to policy. During the LDP presidential election, of the five candidates this most recent round, I think that her answers were frequently the deepest when it came to policy issues. And it was the third time. The third time was the charm for her. She had run for LDP president before, and she lost last year about this time to Ishiba. But this time she was able to prevail. Last thing I would say is she's certainly a nationalist. Known for that, known for her trips to Yasukuni Shrine, which we can talk about. But those are some of the key features of Takaichi Sanae from my
So
perspective.
what does her premiership mean for Japan's politics right now? I mean, you mentioned she won the presidency of the LDP, but the LDP seems to be struggling with the popularity at the moment. It just doesn't seem to have the dominance that it used to have in the past.
You're exactly right. I was here in July for the upper house election. And what I would say is that the LDP looked like an exhausted party, that it was running out of ideas. It has not done well in the polls for the last year. It lost the lower house in October last year. It lost or did poorly in the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly elections in June. And then in July, as I mentioned, they lost the upper house. So they have, three strikes, right? You're out. So they're trying to get back into the game, so to speak. I think one of the challenges that she has is that her party is rather split right now between moderates and conservatives. But her election showed that the conservatives, the party wanted to be moved to the right. And part of that was because of a party further to the right called the Sanseito Party. It's a kind of Trumpy party that's gotten a lot of attention. It's had sort of anti-foreigner rhetoric, anti-immigrant rhetoric. And the debate in the LDP was, which way do we go? Do we go moderate or do we go conservative? And they've certainly gone conservative. She rode a wave of grassroots support. I mean, she did really well with the grassroots LDP members, and that's what led her to be able to win the LDP presidency. So, yeah, that's where I would say the LDP is right now. But they're in a desperate need to rebrand, being the first female leader of it, I think, is a step in that direction, but she's got challenges ahead.
Well, it sounds like there are the same populist pressures affecting Japanese politics that are affecting politics elsewhere in the world. Now, David, the markets have been reacting to the new prime minister with something called the Takaichi trade. And by that, they mean buy stocks, sell bonds, and short the yen. What are the specific policies that she's championing that has led to this strategy?
Well, we talked a few minutes ago about her being an Abe Shinzo protege. So I think this all comes from Abenomics, right? Abenomics was promoting loose monetary policy, loose fiscal policy, and structural reform, the so called three arrows. Now, Abenomics, I think, was successful on the loose fiscal policy and loose monetary policy. Not so successful on the third arrow of the structural reform, but she's very much associated with that policy and has been very supportive of it. So I think that's what's driven the markets, right? That they see more spending coming down the pipe, that they see a looser monetary policy that's going to lead to, and that's led to the stock market having this brief boom here that we've seen, and also the yen weakening, and the yen has weakened. So I think that's really what's going on here, what's driving it. Now, what I would say is, well, is this really the right policy recipe? Because Abenomics was trying to address the issue of deflation, right? Japan had a big problem. I mean, it had years of deflation.
Yes.
That's not the problem now. The problem now is inflation. And is Abenomics the right solution here? And I have a question about that. And I do see her being constrained in some ways because on the fiscal side, she may have a little bit more latitude there, but Japan has a lot of debt already. The debt to GDP ratio is quite high, and there are some budget hawks in her administration, like former Prime Minister Aso Tado, and so she may be somewhat constrained on the spending. And then also on monetary policy, what I would say is I think the Bank of Japan under Governor Ueda is on the path to normalization. And she might be able to slow that down a little bit, but I think that he's going to stick to that path and that she will have limited impact there.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that answer, but let me start first. You mentioned inflation. There's going to be some gas tax relief, I think, in her policy, or at least she campaigned on that. What are the details of that, and how effective is that likely to be?
Yeah, I mean, that gas tax, essentially, it's frequently called a provisional gas tax, a temporary gas tax. It goes back to the 1970s. So it wasn't very temporary, I would say. But it looks like that the opposition parties, as well as the LDP, agree that that gas tax should go away. And you may see that happen as soon as this extraordinary diet session that has just started. Um, I think I think the bigger tax issue that's out there that's getting a lot of attention is the consumption tax. And, that's 10% on most items. It's 8% on food. And in the upper house elections, it was very interesting because all the opposition parties ran on a platform of either abolishing that tax or at least reducing it temporarily, perhaps on food. And the new coalition partner for the LDP, the Ishin no Kai, is definitely supporting, a cut on food. I think the Japanese public really wants to have some relief from inflation. The LDP playbook so far has been spend more money, give them, cash handouts, give them subsidies to help counteract the higher prices. But they want to see a tax cut. And so one of the watch points here for Takaichi is how she deals with pressure from the opposition parties and Ishinokai, the new coalition partner, to cut that consumption tax. She's in the past has supported cutting the consumption tax, but she walked that back a bit when she was campaigning to be a bit more moderate. That'll be very interesting to see how she handles that because the consumption tax is a major revenue source for Japan.
Right now, she has also had in her campaign promises policies to target strategic industries such as AI and chips and that sort of thing. One of our members is asking, will the new government be open to increasing public-private partnerships with foreign capitalized firms?
I am not sure about that, but I think you're exactly right that, as an economic security minister, that she realizes the importance and will put more importance on, key industries like semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, that those are going to be a priority for this administration. And you will see more money being spent there. We also know we're going to see more money being spent on defense. So I see those types of areas as being her priority areas.
Now, you had mentioned also that their debt to GDP ratio is very high. My understanding is probably near, if not at the top of the OECD list of countries at this point, and that has to do with demographic challenges and a slew of other things. But doesn't that limit her areas? And also, more spending. I would think that that would also put downward pressure on the yen at a time when the United States is probably going to be wanting to talk about that. Wonder what your thoughts are on that set of questions.
Yeah, I mean, look, it goes back to my point that we're in an inflationary environment. This is very different. I think Japan got very used to being able to borrow lots of money when the interest rates were negative, right, and zero, and it was very easy to finance the spending because you're practically paying no interest, right? But you see that the interest rate on the 10-year bond, for example, is going up, setting new records, and that this is going to be a reality that she's going to have to confront is that the money is not as cheap as it used to be. And we already have, as you mentioned, a debt to GDP ratio of 250%. And so that is another reason why I see her being somewhat constrained on the fiscal side. And I would say, in general, my sort of base case for analyzing how she's going to be able to move forward is that she's going to be constrained on many fronts. That she's conservative and she would like to do a lot more conservative things in some way, in many ways, but that she's going to be constrained. She's constrained. We haven't talked about this yet, but she doesn't have a majority in the lower house or the upper house. And this is the political reality. She's going to have to work with other opposition parties. So she's going to be limited.
Some of my colleagues here at the chamber put out a report yesterday that noted that her coalition partners in the Japan Innovation Party, the Ishinokai, by their own choice, decided not to join the cabinet. So it seems like, that gives them the ability to walk away. But I'm wondering now, all of these constraints that you mentioned, that's coming at a time when she's got just days to prepare for a visit of Donald Trump here. How is that going to tie her hands as she tries to famously, get along with the president that is going to be looking for what sort of for takeaways from this trip?
I mean, she's trying to get out ahead of it is what she's doing, and I think she's smart. We're already hearing report or seeing reports here in Tokyo, for example. Japan has been on path to reach 2% spending of 2% of GDP by 2027. She's going to give a speech tomorrow where she's going to push that up. And the supplementary budget that they're planning to pass in this extraordinary diet session is going to get them to 2%. That's a pretty that's pretty big news, and I don't think at least I wasn't expecting that from the supplementary budget. I was expecting the supplementary budget to mainly be focused on inflation. So she's, indicated I think it's smart. She'll have a good, point she'll have a very good talking point to make to Trump. I moved up the schedule on this. And also, I think they're going to be looking to put in front of Trump some investments that Japan is willing to make in the United States under the new US-Japan investment agreement. And Trump's going to want to see that. So I'm sensing that she realizes that when she sits down with Trump, that in addition to being smart like Abe and using the Abe playbook of flattery, that she needs to be like very proactive and not reactive and showing Trump that, look, Japan is an asset for the United States. We're not a liability. And my view is that Trump sort of sees foreign policy countries are assets or liabilities. That we're an asset. We're doing what we can to protect ourselves on defense. We're doing what we can to contribute to the U.S. economy and manufacturing. And so I think those are key points that she has to be able to make to him.
So you mentioned that Japan is planning to raise defense spending up to 2%. In countries the size of Japan, it's very big. But if you take a look at Europe right now, they're being pushed to put things up from 4 or 5%. I mean, the numbers are actually even bigger as a percentage of GDP. I'm wondering if that's going to be enough to satisfy the prime minister's American interlocutors.
Probably not. I mean, we know how Trump is, right? He's the maximalist. He keeps pushing, and so I should back up and say that they're fully expecting that the U.S. will push for at least 3.5%, and as you mentioned, 5% is now being kicked around out there,
Right.
and I I think that she would like to get there and to show a path of getting to, even more defense spending, but the reality is, she can't do that right now, but that they fully I think the Japanese government has been expecting, if they haven't, then they haven't been paying attention, more pressure from the Trump administration to spend more money on defense and that they have to get their ducks in a row. There's also the host nation support that is, the amount that Japan pays to the United States because to support the troops who are stationed in the United States. That negotiation will start here if it hasn't already started. The agreement expires in March 2027. So they know the heat's coming. And they're going to need to be responsive. But I've been impressed, just by this news that's broken here in Tokyo that she's planning to push up the date on the 2% number.
Just a reminder for our members, Japan hosts 15 large American bases from Misawa in the north all the way down to Kadena in Okinawa and spends up to 1.5 billion a year on the costs of those bases. Japan's military posture in the past has been a source of tension with its Asian neighbors, and Takaichi, being a staunch conservative, of course, has visited Yasukuni Shrine very many times, and many of their neighbors feel like Yasukuni Shrine, in its commemoration of the war dead, also commemorates, Class A war criminals, and has been a really sensitive point. Do you think she's going to be visiting Yasukuni Shrine as prime minister? I'd see kind of hard not to, given her political stance. But what's that likely to do to an Asian? How's are the Asian neighbors likely to respond to that?
They won't like it, is the bottom line. Well, the last time a sitting prime minister went to Yasukuni was in December of 2013. It was Abe. And he went there to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of his second premiership. And it made quite the splash. The United States was not happy at the time. They issued a statement saying they were disappointed. Um, but she is a regular visitor. I mean, she was last there in August when there was there are three times that are generally considered to be sort of prime times for prime ministers or cabinet members to go to Yasukuni. That's in the spring when there's a festival. That's in August because of the anniversary of the war ending. And that's in the fall because of a fall festival. Well, that fall festival was just this past weekend
I see.
at Yasukuni. She did not go. I think it would have been I mean, it would have started off her premiership on a very wrong foot if she had gone, so it was wise not to go. I think that she will not go for a while, but if she gets stronger support, if she has an election where her numbers are stronger, I could absolutely see her going. I mean, it's part of her brand. Right? And she is definitely of the Abe view that going to Yasukuni is no different than going to Arlington Cemetery for the US president. And that's her view. She's had that view for years, regular visitor. So my base case would be at some point, she needs to be on stronger political footing, but at some point, and if she gets there, that she would make the trip.
All right. Well, as a final question, I'd like to close with a question one of our members submitted in advance. Our member asked, Japan and the rest of our U.S. allies around the Pacific Rim have become the target of stringent new U.S. tariffs. How are our Asian allies reacting to this? And do you detect any resentment?
Look, one of the things I admire about the Japanese and their ability to work with Trump is they're extraordinarily pragmatic. And I think that the Japanese government made a very accurate assessment of, okay, we're in a card game now with Trump, and we don't hold a really strong hand. So we need to get out of this card game as quickly as we can. And what Japan focused on to deal with the tariffs, because they wanted to get that automobiles tariff down, was they focused on purchase agreements, and they focused on increasing investment in the United States. And so they were able to reach a deal. And I sense that, yes, the Japanese public eh, probably not that happy about how things were, came down through it all, and felt like they were being treated a bit unfairly. But they were able to get to an agreement, and that has settled things down. And I do not sense, being here in Tokyo, there is, great resentment on the ground about the agreement. They're just sort of breathing a sigh of relief. Look, that we were able to reach an agreement with Tariff Man. We can now put that aside. All the focus now becomes on the investment agreement and making sure Japan can step up and make those investments. And let's move on. It doesn't, the alliance is extraordinarily important to them, and any kind of trade friction they'd be worried could affect the alliance. So let's move forward, I think is the feeling that I sense.
Sound analysis, and we would expect nothing less. And we'll be watching closely to see whether businesses can thrive amid this new reality that is unfolding us real time. David Boling, former USTR trade negotiator and director of Japan and Asian trade at Eurasia Group, thank you for joining us live from Tokyo.
Thank you, Jay. Real treat to join.
Our audience has gotten their shot of informational espresso and is ready to tackle the day. Missed a live episode? Catch the replay on our website, LinkedIn, or on YouTube. You can also listen to the call's podcast edition on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to you, our members, for joining us. This has been The Call, brought to you by the Global Intelligence Desk, asking the right questions to navigate uncertain times.